Let's do it. House of the Dragon, season two, episode two. Much like we did with the boys, we're to set the scene now with an alt recap. And chaos rules the Red Keep in the wake of Jaehaerys's murder. Helena is understandably traumatized. Aegon is breaking every glass possible. Alicent is beside herself, and Otto is thinking about the PR of it all. Someone has got to think about the optics here, guys. His plan is to hold a ceremony with Alicent and Helena, the faces of mourning, with a town crier blaming Rhaenyra. It's basically Princess Diana's funeral if you had Elton John walking in front of the casket through London yelling, "The paparazzi are cunts! The paparazzi are cunts!" Rhaenyra is enraged at the idea that she's behind it until she realizes she kind of was. Well, Damon, who sits at the small council table, quietly wondering if he should go all shaggy on this and be like, "But you headed small children? It wasn't me." And then he just decides, nah, you know what? I'm just going to fess up. And they settle on having a blazing argument instead where Rhaenyra says that she can't trust Damon. So after yelling at him about that for a bit, she subsequently trusts him to fly off to Harrenhal. Blood and cheese fair about as well as two murderers who let the only witness run straight to the Kingsguard should. Aegon bludgeons Blood to death in his cell and hangs every rat catcher, including Cheese, from the walls of King's Landing. This infuriates Otto. Seriously, think of the optics, people here, who ends up talking his way into being replaced as the Hand by Kristen Cole, which is like substituting Kylian Mbappe up front at the Euros and bringing me on in his place. That is a serious downgrade. What are you doing, Aegon? Kristen seems to have gotten the gig because he actually watched Money in the Bank 2015, because his idea to end the war is basically a move from the Bella twins' arsenal. He goes for some twin magic here. He punishes Eric for having a dirty cloak by sending him to Dragonstone to kill Rhaenyra or pretending to be his twin Eric. He gets all the way to Rhaenyra's bedroom before being stopped by his brother. The two are so identical, even randomly with their names. Everyone's like, "Which one is Eric?" And they're like, "I think Eric's the one who's on our side," or "Is that Eric? Fuck if I know, look at it." They entered this world together and they left it together too. Eric kills himself after successfully defending the queen and killing his brother, and now thank fuck we don't have to get confused about their names anymore. In other news, poor people get hungry. The lad who saved Corlys has a brother because apparently we have a quota to fill now that we're down two twins. Somehow Mazaria blagged herself into a free boat to the Sin Cities to the surprise of fucking nobody. Aemon likes being Little Spoon, and Alicent and Kristen celebrated his big promotion with a bit of hack. That was a week in the life of Westeros. That was season two, episode two, Rhaenyra the Cruel. It was written, by the way, by showrunner Ryan Condal and directed by House of the Dragon regular Claire Kilner. Guys, thoughts on Rhaenyra the Cruel and season two so far? Dan, we'll start with yourself.
So, like, I mean, last week, the first episode was just brilliant. It was just so much fun to get back into it. And I'm looking for, I still haven't done my second watch, but the excitement definitely added to it. But thinking back on it, it was brilliant. Um, I liked with the promo after last week's one, which I always check out for this episode, that everything they showed in that promo seemed to have happened pretty much in the first 5 minutes of it. So everything after that was a bit of a surprise. I
Mm.
thought the whole show was going to center around the fallout, which it did to an extent, but not the way I thought of Jaehaerys's assassination. And obviously, even though it did, it wasn't just about the funeral procession. It wasn't just about how people felt. There was actual, you know, proper fallout. There was results of the assassination, and I was very surprised with how Aegon reacted so emotionally to it, because he's not exactly this series Joffrey, but he has been quite blasé and uncaring so far. And the most we've seen him care about anything, surprisingly, for him, because for anyone else it'd be obvious, is the death of his heir.
Mm.
I thought this was really, really good. It kind of took me for a ride that I didn't know was going to go in. I just think Otto is probably one of my favorite characters because he is played so well. I mean, I hate him,
Yeah.
but he's one of those guys you love to hate because he's just such a weasel. Um, in a very different way. Once again, another wrestling reference. He kind of is a bit of a Bobby Heenan. You
Mm.
love him. He's got his finger in every single pie. He's pulling the strings. He's involved in everything. But at the same time, he's just an absolute dick. But he is a pleasure to watch. So I really like this episode. I think everyone rated the last episode a little bit higher, and even my partner Kelly, who I do have a girlfriend. Um, oh, back, you like that, don't you? Um, she did say she liked the first episode more, but I actually think now in looking back, I really, really enjoyed episode two.
Ooh, okay, interesting. I still would prefer episode one, but like it's a close race, and again, I think this season's just knocking it out of the park. Kev, are you very much same mind? Are you a big fan of the first two episodes? How you feel?
Same mind. I would agree with Dan. I think I prefer the second episode to the first one.
Ooh.
I did really like the first one. It was just I don't know. I was having this conversation last night that compared to, and I don't want to fucking go always like compare it to Game of Thrones, but like there's not as many characters in this that I'm rooting for. I still love the show. I love the intrigue, but I find it hard to kind of get behind as many characters as I did in Game of Thrones. Um, so I don't know. Some of it doesn't. That's why I don't think I preferred episode one as much to this one. This one just had to me. I don't know who plays Aegon. I can't remember the actor's name. Knocked it out of the park this week, though. Absolutely unreal. Like
Mhm.
from the get go, smashing up poor Viserys like model that he spent all of season one doing, smashed the fucking bits. But yeah, like his reaction in that scene, his reaction in the meeting room then as well was just unbelievable as well. I thought he was just complete standout. And Reese Ifans as well, like unbelievable. I'm going to show my own wrestling reference actually with Reese, or this episode. That bit where he found out that Kristen Cole had sent Eric off reminded me so much of Triple H during the era of Seth Rollins when he was Mr. Money in the Bank and Randy Orton were kind of constantly at each other. And there's one episode I remember of Raw of Triple H being like, Randy, don't you fucking do it. Don't you RKO him. And like straight out of nowhere again. And Triple H just has this auto fucking look of like, for fuck's sake.
I love
It was
it.
like instant reminder of it. It was brilliant.
Amazing, amazing. I don't know if I love this. I've watched now. Maybe I will. I've watched this now twice, and I've watched episode one like four times, like twice just for funsies. This interestingly, and this is sounds like it's criticism, but it's actually not. This was a bit of a filler episode, kind of moving the pieces into place on the board for shit to hit the fan. But that's not a bad thing. Like I said, we were dying. And the big thing that people hated, and it was something that I worried about when they announced that this season was going to be 8 episodes rather than 10 episodes. Because the thing that made us kind of fall out of love with Game of Thrones in the final series was they didn't do enough filler episodes. So the big things didn't feel as big. It just felt like stuff happening all the time. Whereas actually the most juicy, delicious parts of like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon are the conversations and the what are they going to do? What's that going to lead to? And talking with your mates about those things and the intrigue and the tension around it. Like, and they can pay it off with kind of really effective set pieces, but we're almost not here for the set pieces. They're like an accoutrement, a little cherry on top. So again, that's a good thing. There were some scenes in it that need a bit of context. Like there's the scenes with the small folk and the lad who saved Corlys. Like we can tell that both are going to be important because we've watched enough Game of Thrones. We know this world. You're not showing this for no reason. Something's going to happen with them, and it's probably going to happen out of the blue as well. So again, we need to at least be familiar with their faces. But I just thought they could have been a bit more smooth with how they did it rather than just throwing a random scene of two brothers that we don't know hugging each other in and kind of going, remember that? And then like there was the scene where we had the small folk who I've actually looked up who he is, and I actually spoiled myself on that because I was just like so confused about should I know these people? Like, have we seen these people before? Because they're treating it like I should know this person, and we haven't. He's a character we just do need to know about.
He was in episode one, wasn't he? That's the only reason because he was in the recap. before the
What?
episode. He was like asking
Remind me.
for something from the king, I think, last week.
Sorry, yes, you're correct. Good show. Yeah, I didn't
And
actually notice that.
and that's what I was like, why did they show him in the
Yeah,
recap? And then they cut to him, was like, I still don't know what the fuck he's about, but
yeah.
I guess he's something.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And like, there's a way to do that without being clunky. Like, again, we saw a lot of the small folk this week, and I enjoyed and appreciate that aspect. But like, what if his wife was in the crowd when the funeral was going through, and we
She
see her
was.
walking into the kitchen? But like, what if kind of we transition from A to B, and it's just like we're just gonna zone in on what the small folk are doing. Whereas for me, it just felt a bit clunky and lacking context. But again, having said that, then you look at absolute A1, put it up there against any Game of Thrones kind of scene there. We've got a couple of them. Otto against Aegon. Just like, again, Aegon is so unpredictable. And both performances, Tom Glencarney is the actor's name, and Rhys Ifans as well. Like, what I love about Aegon and how sensational he's playing this is he is supposed to be this show's Joffrey. But Tom Glencarney almost has no interest in making him Joffrey. He wants to make him human. He's like, he is Breaking Good. Do you know what I mean? He is like, how can I make this people feel for this monster? Because all we know of him from season 1, keep in mind as well, if you've forgotten or didn't do a binge before season 2, he raped one of his chambermaids and didn't give a fuck when he was confronted about it, and like, we're supposed to hate this guy, but he makes you feel for him. He makes you empathize with him. And that is such a great performance. And then you have Rhys Ifans just like chewing scenery. Like, I loved how he just spat out that line. Is that what you think? And it was just like, oh my God, like at any stage, like Aegon could just go behead him. And like, you're just sitting there like, this show will do it. Rhaenyra and Damon scene as well. Like, they went to 10. It was brilliant. Kristen playing Little Dick, ordering Eric away just to feel like he's doing something because he feels guilty for missing out last week. Mysaria giving her harrowing life story and talking her way out of trouble again. Then you've got the major set piece of the episode that we're going to discuss more shortly. This was a filler episode, but if this is filler in this world, fill me the fuck up. This was excellent TV. They are nailing this series. I want to talk war strategy for a second with my two most foremost war strategists here. So let's talk, because it was a pretty bad week for both of them. The episode is literally called Rhaenyra the Cruel because she's now linked to killing a child, which is not a great look. It's not the ideal look you want when you're trying to curry support. Well, the Blacks sacked Otto Hightower as hand and replaced him with Kristen Cole because of what turned out to be a failed assassination attempt on Rhaenyra. The Blacks also are the Greens, or sorry, the Greens sacked Otto Hightower. The Greens had the funeral procession, so that was it kind of worked. But then they had the failed assassination as well. The Blacks didn't punish Stamen, they sent Bela as well to spy their massive dragon. Both sides now officially making moves. Kev, who do you think won the week? Who do you think had a more successful week on when there was wins and losses for both?
I think the Blacks maybe won. They didn't have a funeral procession, so that was nice. Yeah, like I think just the funeral procession, because like the way that cut as well was really strange, that it felt like my heart was on my mouth the entire time, being like, that child's head's gonna probably pop off again when it was on top of the
roll.
Yeah, like it was like, oh, this is
depressingly.
stitched on again, but like the way that they were trying to get the card out, it was like, is this gonna fall off? Is it gonna be horrific? I don't know if the funeral procession was like a massive success, although maybe it was, because Otto did say it did curry favor, but I don't know, just the absolute uproar that it kind of sent throughout the entirety of Team Green, I think, and how much it splintered everyone. I know like Damon and Rhaenyra had their fight, but for the most part, everybody's kind of all good there. The Team Green's in chaos at the moment. And I think they probably took the L this week a little bit.
Team Green, as in Aegon side, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay, interesting. The Blacks won. What are your thoughts, Dan? I nearly called you Red Vinny there. That is something I haven't said in 20 years. What the fuck? Your audio's off. Something's up for your audio.
I met someone during the week and they actually referred to me as Vinny as well. That's weird. It just clicks back in. Anyway, yeah, I agree. I think when you really look at it, I was kind of thinking, God, did the Greens maybe win from a propaganda point of view? But I mean, Christian Dickhole, his first order as Hand of the King. Yeah, I can't wait for him to die. I hope
Yeah.
it's bloody and gross. His first call as Hand of the King, which he made granted before he became Hand, was to send Eric to Dragonstone. That mission was unsuccessful. Also with Aegon killing all the rat catchers, he kind of undid the propaganda that the funeral was supposed to create. So, from a political and a strategic point of view, you could argue that the Greens have lost. Now, did the Blacks win though? Not really. Didn't really win anything. They survived. So they maybe drew, but yeah, the Greens, I think they lost. They were in a worse position than they were at the start of the episode. Even though the episode started off with a dead child, to go worse from that is pretty fucking spectacular. It's George Orwell. You're still the king, you know. I don't like this shit. But yeah, I think when it comes to who's on top, maybe I suppose who won and lost, Rhaenyra's just ahead now.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because this war is such a clusterfuck because again, it's not even two kingdoms fighting against each other. It is the remnants of one kingdom split in half. Like, look at the Kingsguards. There's what, like 4 Kingsguard left now? You know what I mean? Until more are appointed. Like, and that's between the two sides. That's why there's no security in any of these castles. It's wild. Yeah, like it is a case of who lost least rather than who
Yeah.
won.
I think Queen Helena as well is she's going to go off the deep end now as well. So that's another thing for the Greens as well.
She really kind of is giving me the Tommen vibes of this.
Yes.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
no control, in a position of high power, and of course when Aemon walked past her on the stairs,
Heartbreaking, man.
yeah, not only her husband but also her brother, like she's completely alone. And that's where Tommen found himself at the end, even though he still had Cersei. He knew, like, you know, that she had orchestrated this wildfire event that just led him to be completely alone. He was alienated from his mother. Um, and I do get the same vibe for poor Helena, and the poor girl is just, she's not the sort of person who's supposed to be in that position. I think in the books, what I led to believe, because they like when they talk about Jamie's dyslexia, they don't call it dyslexia. But from what I understand, is Helena has been referred to as essentially having autism, but they've never said autism. So she's in a position where she just may not have the mental faculties to deal with the position she's found herself in.
Wow.
So she doesn't even understand why she's alone and why she's so ostracized from everyone.
Does she get visions in season 1 though?
Yeah, it's a Beast Beneath the Boards, she called that.
Yeah.
I think that's the only other one we've had apart from I'm Afraid of the Rats. I also like, again, it's stasis, especially when that you have that kind of context in mind of, like, again, she doesn't have the mental faculties, or her faculties are otherwise engaged kind of with you know, a lot of the visions that she has. But I loved Aegon's reaction to the rats last week. Her kind of premonition. She's like, "What a mysterious creature my sister is." A mysterious wonder, I think he called her. Yeah, this is tough, and yeah, Helena, and like, it's so. Do you know what it reminded me of? I'm gonna do 2 weird comps now. One is Helena's situation reminded me of, and the only reason I'm making this is because I'm binging Cobra Kai ahead of that coming back now, and that's very much at the forefront of my mind. But it's Robbie at a Cobra Kai shit situation, and his ma is too busy trying to get the ride from any drunken man who'll pay her rent. That, like, she doesn't understand that her son needs her and is struggling. And that's kind of the situation that Helena finds herself in, unfortunately. Like, Alicent should be there for her, and by all accounts, the one positive you can say about her, well, you could have said about her, is she's a caring mother, but she's got a new boyfriend, so like that's her distraction, and it's so shit. Another comparison I'm gonna make, because again, I'm going to compare it to Die Hard a little bit. That's what I thought of when I watched this episode, and I'll explain why. Because this, I don't know who wins this. Like I said, I haven't read ahead in the books. I don't know, and I've somehow managed to multiple times not retain the scene in Game of Thrones where Joffrey just tells you the entire plot of Dance of the Dragons.
Yeah.
So
No
I don't know who
bastard.
wins or what happens. Like, but like the entire show feels like, you know, it's a tragedy, and the Greens just have this in the bag. Like they have every kind of advantage on their side. They've got the illusions of power, they've got Vagar, they've got the throne. Well, Rhaenyra is morally right, but it just doesn't seem like she's coming together, and you can't see. And again, this is why we're talking about it in terms of who lost the least, because they can't form a coherent enough game plan, because they're just not very good at this, and Viserys didn't give them either side the tools to be able to manage it. Because Viserys himself, for as much as he was a well-liked king who managed to keep peace in the realm, wasn't a very competent king. He liked to play Lego a lot. Nothing wrong with playing Lego, but it shouldn't be the only thing you do as king. That seems, and they just don't have the tools to be able to do this. But just as I start to think there's no way the Blacks can come back for this, they have that moment. And why it reminded me of Die Hard was, it was the moment where the FBI came in. They're like, haha, we're going to show them, buddy, what we're going to do. And then they just cut the electricity. And then it's like, that's exactly what they wanted you to do. And the moment that they did this for me was naming Kristen Cole Hand. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, trying to respect Kristen as one of the most powerful people in the realm is like trying to respect your boss after you found out they're like a conspiracy theorist on Twitter. You know what I mean? It's like, you're not telling me what to do, mate. I can't. You're just a weirdo. It is awful, and I just did not see this coming. It is absolutely piss poor. He is the poster boy for failing upwards. He lets the heir to the throne die because he's too busy for riding their grandmother, and then he hatches a bad plan to assassinate Rhaenyra. Otto says Aegon is going to regret it. I don't think that's up for debate. So the question I have for you guys is, how soon is Aegon going to regret? Like, are we talking minutes into next week's episode, or is this going to play out over kind of the season? Kev, what are your thoughts on Kristen hand? And yeah, how bad is this going to fail?
I kind of wanted to play over the whole season, like he's just like this Mr. Magoo kind of fucking character of like failing upwards is like one of the best fucking ways of describing him. But yeah, I could not believe it when he was made king, because like I thought, oh, what's his name? Like creepy dude. Laris. I thought he was for sure. Now maybe something's gonna happen and he does end up being the hand, but like, or maybe he's gonna get to Kristen Cole at some way. But like, I can't believe it. I cannot believe that he's the hand of the king. It's gonna be the best. I can't wait.
Like, yeah, it is delicious. It's essentially like, you know, because and praise as well to, like, it's like Fabian Frankel plays Kristen, and it is a testament to how much that I loathe Kristen as a character that I don't want to give Fabian Frankel that praise. But like, that's his performance is making me hate him. Like, that's why he's great. Like it's like naming David Beckham as the speaker in the House of Parliament. Order. He's such a weak. He's got like, even his voice is like, hey up there. Like, it's like, no, you're not the hand of the king. I really want to see everything he does. I want to see him lead small council meetings and to be like, now you shut up, innit?
Him encouraging Aegon though, like he's just gonna let Aegon do whatever the fuck he wants as well, which is gonna be brilliant.
Oh, and like all we've seen of him is this little fantasy football game planning with Eamon like last week. Like, yeah, they're literally playing Sabudio. station that is Randy station. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, thoughts on Kristen as Hand of the King, Dan? Like, are you looking forward to this as much as we are?
Yeah, I mean, like I said already, he's failed straight away. It would be the equivalent of making Lord Larys strong foot of the king. So, I mean, it's just like, um, like Kev said, and I totally think that's the case. That the whole thing about Otto Hightower being the hand of the king is that you are arguably the most powerful person in the realm. Not on paper, obviously that's going to be the monarch, but ahead of the king because you have to be the one to dictate, what are the good and bad decisions to made. You're the reason, whereas the monarch is the voice. They get to, take all the credit, whereas you have to make the difficult decisions. So the power really lies with the hand. It always has been. They've always made that abundantly clear. Otto was obviously a great hand because he was able to step up and say no where he needed to. He's able to make the difficult decisions. He's able to remove himself emotionally. Like the funeral was a great example of that. But totally agree, Kev. What's going to happen is you're going to have Christian agreeing with everything Aegon wants to do. And that's going to lead him to trouble. So he's going to be like, that's a great idea, my king. Let's whatever. And it's going to go terrible because, like I said, his first idea was to send in Carl from Shameless to, assassinate Rhaenyra. Also, found out in the middle of the episode last night, it's Carl from Shameless. Are you kidding me? I can't believe that's the same actor. He looks so different. But it failed. So, and they know that it failed because he's obviously one of the Kingsguard. So Rhaenyra's like, I've lost one of my Kingsguards through grief. His brother tried to assassinate me. Who would have sent him? It's obviously, in her thinking, gonna be Aegon. It doesn't matter if it was Christian. It doesn't matter if it was one of your Kingsguard. It doesn't matter if it was Otto. At the end of the day, the person is going to say yay or nay to the plan is going to be the king. So it's what we're going to get next week is an inversion of what we got this week. Damon said, "Kill that little one-eyed bastard." Oh shit, we killed the wrong one, and it's like, right, go kill the queen, and it's like, yeah, he's dead, and they know we tried to kill her. So it's this back and forth, this subterfuge, this political bullshit. Um, and I think we've set ourselves up as viewers to be highly entertained. But like, we're wondering, like, like green or black, like, it's gonna be a shit time in King's Landing.
Yeah. I think as well, like, again, I don't know what's going to happen in this story because I haven't read ahead, but what I never expected here was that it's just a comedy of errors. Like every week the plan goes wrong and it gets fucked up in a delicious way. Let's check in on Dragonstone now. I want to talk some Rhaenyra Daemon as well because I think that's an interesting discussion to be had. But first, let's talk. For the last time, we have to be like, which one's Eric? Which one's Eric? Doesn't matter. Both are dead. But your thoughts on that whole sequence and like the plan and kind of how things turned out. Damn.
So I was thinking the whole time from Eric, which is Aegon's guy.
Yeah.
If I'm getting that right.
A for Aegon. Yeah.
Yeah, Eric. Like, yes, there you go.
Yeah.
So he, like, the fear he must have had in doing that, because I mean he's going in essentially from his point of view as himself to commit a highly political assassination, but he's not, it has like the cover of night, or he's not got something protecting him. He's just going in pretending to be his brother, who for all intents and purposes is the same person that he is. There seems to be very few differences between the two characters, which is kind of like how that character works so well. And I was just thinking about the fear he must have had. And I love a good fight scene, as you know. I'm a big sucker for a good choreography, and I loved the dirtiness of this fight and how evenly matched they were, which they would be if they were identical twins. But at the end there was a lot of, which one was that? Did he, because he stabbed himself? Was that the what? I kind of really got involved in that, and of course checking it out now. It was Eric, good one, killed Eric, bad one, and through grief killed himself. So once again, they've left themselves in a shitstorm. I think ending the episode with that whole sequence and not bringing it into next week was great. It was a good payoff. One of the reasons why I really did enjoy this week's episode. Good bit of action after a lot of exposition. You have the intensity, you have the that enjoyable anxiety, and then you've like you capping something off with a good fight scene. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think it's one of the benefits to having Fire or Blood as the source material. Again, for anyone who's never read any of it, it's not a story in the way. It's not like reading like kind of a Song of Ice and Fire, which is very similar to Game of Thrones. And if anything, a Song of Ice and Fire is much more in depth than Game of Thrones, because not only do you get the same instances Game of Thrones, the chapters of a Song of Ice and Fire are in the characters' heads. So you're getting more thoughts and you're getting more insight into why they make the decisions and how they're feeling at certain points and so on. Fire and Blood is a historical text. So like the entire first season of House of the Dragon was like a chapter and a half. Like, so it's just like, boom, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And then what House of the Dragon gets to do is color in those and give more context and give more humanity and tell it as a story. So that even if you've read the books, it's not necessarily that there's a lot of new stuff in there. And it means that every episode can have a moment like this because there's so much content. It's a 400 or 500 page book, but every paragraph is like an episode of TV, you know. So I like that aspect of it. We're never kind of left longing, and this was a great kind of thing to give away. But also, they're not huge characters. We've only had one episode where they've played a major part, which was actually a cool side note. Claire Kilner directed the penultimate episode of last season, which arguably, again, I'm not putting this on her, was the worst episode of House of the Dragon. The bit after Viserys, the episode after Viserys died, where the two twins had to hunt for Aegon and track him down. But it's a nice bit of symmetry that she directs this as well. But Kev, your own thoughts on Eric versus Eric?
I loved it because even though Eric is sent from the bad guys, because of how terrible Kristen Cole treated him in that scene where he, like, remember the cloak was mucky and he was just trying to eat food after a long night, and you're so on his side because you hate Kristen Cole so much. So you're kind of, I liked that about that he doesn't want to do this, but he's just forced into it. I loved the sneaking around of the tension that was kind of building up. The only thing that I thought was weird in this scene is what's her name, who was going to get the boat while he was going on. Mysaria. She looks at him and she recognizes him. And I was like, oh, there's gonna be something happening there, and then nothing ever does.
Yeah.
I thought that was really strange.
What came of that? I was so frustrated with that, especially afterwards, because I'm like, your man's gonna come back and tell them now, but no one did.
Yeah.
Why did they include that if it just went no? It was very, very strange.
It was really odd. And then just having two guards at the door being like, yeah, come on in.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. Like, but yeah, I loved how tragic that last battle was. And as Dan said as well, the grittiness of that fight scene of like, when what I think was it Eric had a wound on his leg and Eric just put his fingers into it as well just to knock him off his feet was brill. Really, really good. And just did not expect that tragic ending at all, but it was just it was heartbreaking, and it was very Shakespearean at the end of it. That was great.
Yeah.
I know Rhaenyra had like a bunch of times to get out of that room when they were fighting, and just was like, should I move? Should I go now?
Yeah. But also, like, if there's two big lads in armor swinging swords, like, you know, I probably wouldn't take the chance. Like, you know what I mean? It's tough though. Yeah. It was one of those fight scenes though, and I think this was really effective, that made you think on the spot. Like the entire time I was thinking, first off, like this shouldn't have worked, but it really did. Like last week they did this exact scene, someone walking through a castle. And it's like, are they going to get caught? Are they going to get caught? And that shouldn't work.
You want the Bugs Bunny sneaking around music?
But it worked for me. It really did. Like, but although also at the same time, I was like, Eric, your twin radar is shocking, because he literally walked past himself multiple times and barely batted an eyelid until like after the third time he walked past himself, he's like, wait a minute. That's not me.
That's
You know
not a
what I mean?
mirror.
Even Rhaenyra's spidey senses were tingling more. Like, remember she was getting her hair done and she just decides to be like an 8-year-old kid, like, tee, running away from your run. Like, she's even sensing something's wrong. But Eric is like, there I am. That seems normal. All because, like, Eric just went, like, moved 2 centimeters to the right behind a pillar. Like, again, like, we spend so much time in this show thinking that this never should have escalated into all out war. I'm going to give an alternative read on that. It is a damning indictment to the incompetence of assassins here that it did get to war, considering that you can apparently just walk right into the royal bedrooms on both sides. You could just straight in. There you go. You want in. There's the queen. There's one queen. There's the other queen. Like, take your pick. But I did love the fight scene for the reasons, and again, I'm not going to go back over it again. Like, it was just gritty, it was real, it was raw. I like the fact there was no soundtrack to it, so it was just like kind of like all you could hear was the clanging and the tension of it, and you could hear the screams and the anguish. I loved the ending. It reminded me of The Last of Us, where you remember the brother killed his brother, and then immediately was like, "What have I done?" And then immediately killed himself. Like, so again, it had that kind of tragic element to it too, but it wasn't you have to think about that. It wasn't like a rip off or anything like that. It was very, very good. So yeah, a win and a great set piece to kind of end it on while not giving away much. In fact, it took stuff away because we don't have to be like, A is for Eric. I was like, if one of them doesn't die, I swear to fucking God, I'm not doing this A is for Eric shit every fucking week, like on this show. So, like, yeah, rest in peace, guys, and well done. Last thing I want to talk about Dragonstone related is Rhaenyra and Daemon. Obviously, they had a massive blow up argument of Rhaenyra saying, I can't trust you, but doesn't do anything with that information. So the question is, what should she do with Daemon? What needs to happen here? Kev, what's your own thoughts?
I don't know what she can do though with him. Like, he's gone off to Harrenhal now to was it raise an army then for in Harrenhal. Like, she needs him. She needs his dragon. So she kind of just has to maybe use his rage to her advantage and figure out some way of controlling that, because I think he is like she can manipulate him, I think, because he's that kind of just brash with some of his decisions, but she needs to figure out how to take advantage of it. Is what I would say to her, but like, or is what I think of their situation. But I loved Damon just kind of like going off like in a sulk basically after that. It's like, I'm getting on my dragon and I'm going away for a while. Bye.
Can't stop me, mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ron proper. Dan, what are your own thoughts on what Rhaenyra should do with Daemon?
I mean, he seems to be more in control now in some ways than she is. Like, she's definitely assuming her role as queen, and well, he's a bit of a mad dog. But he's not listening to her. And at the end of the day, like we've seen several times in Game of Thrones, where you have like a king or a queen, like saying to members of the family. We've seen it with Aegon this week and Otto, his grandfather. We've seen it with Joffrey and Cersei several times. Like, you may be my mother, you may be my grandfather, but at the end of the day, I'm the king. You do what I say. She doesn't have that control over him. And he is like, there's all this subterfuge that's going on that leads directly back to him. And in season one, we've seen how infatuated she is with him. So shouldn't be a king. It's like the way, God, the character's name's gone out of my head completely, but one of the characters in Game of Thrones said, like, my brother should be king. I shouldn't have too much of an adventurer. And I get that with Daemon as well. That he wouldn't make a good king, but in his position, he finds himself very comfortable. I don't know if Rhaenyra has the control over Daemon she'll need. And one thing that has been in the back of my head the entire 2 seasons is Arya in Game of Thrones always looked up to Rhaenyra. And she always read about her, and it's just strange seeing Rhaenyra being the way she is now with someone who is so strong-minded as Arya, kind of building herself around the image that she had in her head of who Rhaenyra was. And it speaks to, like you said, this is based on a historical text that exists inside the world of Ice and Fire. So how much of that text is propaganda? How much of it is real? Because we're essentially seeing that history play out now. So Rhaenyra needs to find her strengths to become this person that Westeros knows her of in the era of Game of Thrones, which she still seems very far removed from being. And to do that, she's going to need to get a handle on Daemon. But I'm not going to comment any further because I think I remember something very crucial from the story that's to come that's been discussed in the Game of Thrones encyclopedia, which I have a big fan of, and something Joffrey says.
Mm.
I might be getting it wrong, but I'm not going to say because if it's what I think happens, then that's its own thing, and we're talking about spoiler territory. So
Okay, fair. Yeah, Rhaenyra's in a tough spot because Daemon does have his benefits, and we've seen him be tamed at certain stages throughout this show. So there's always that part of you who it's like having, say, Cristiano Ronaldo in your team, where it's like he's egotistical, he can be a monster, he can wreck everyone's head, he's a perfectionist, he wants only his own success at the expense of the team at times. But God damn it, when he's on form, he's the best footballer in the world. And even when things are going wrong, it's like when Ronaldo last played for Man United, it's like there has to be a way to make this work. But and again, Caraxes, Daemon's dragon, is one of the strongest dragons in the world. Like he seemed, and again, Daemon, prone to arrogance. So just because he feels confident doesn't mean he should. But he seemed confident that if him and Rhaenys flew to King's Landing, they could take out Vhagar, and that speaks to Caraxes' strength. That it'd be an interesting fight because no one's taking out Vhagar 1-on-1. So yeah, there's a lot to like there. The con of that is that essentially the risk is, yeah, you've got to go to a really powerful dragon, but then if he owns you, you're fucked, and if he turns on you, you're fucked, and that's a really powerful dragon that's now against you or not acting in your best interest. So, and again, ultimately, what is holding this together is love. Is Rhaenyra kind of looking at him and going, this is the guy I fell in love with. This is the guy I knew. She's always known who Daemon is. And that was part of the attraction. He was a rebel in season 1. He always went against Viserys. He's consistent in who he is, even if what he's consistent in is inconsistency and unpredictability. But I want to share something just to go off on a little tangent, but I'll share a lesson that I learned myself when I kind of built low blows at first. Okay. You need to build an effective team. Everyone needs to be bought into what you're doing. Even if you feel like someone is irreplaceable, if they're not bought in, what actually happens is they start to become a poison that slowly starts to erode the team and make everything weaker. And Ronaldo at Man United is another great example of how we had the best footballer in the world, but if he's pissing out, if he's spitting into the tent rather than spitting out of the tent, it just ends up causing more damage. Like ultimately, even if you feel the need to clean house a little bit and you feel a little light and you feel a little loose, having that bondage, a team on the same page will sometimes be better. Another example I'll give of similar is Ireland at the 2002 World Cup when Roy Keane left because of Saipan. We all thought, what are we going to do with Roy Keane? We were actually probably better without him because the team bonded and gelled as a result, wanting to show that, and that can happen. Right now, for me, Daemon is a poison in Rhaenyra's camp. He is an absolute liability. He is a risk. He does not respect her. Again, it is one of those questions. It's like when your partner asks you, do you love me or do you trust me? There needs to be a yes in there somewhere. No matter what you say, you need to say yes. Rhaenyra asked, essentially, do you respect me? And Daemon never said yes at any point in there. And then the only way she got him to engage was when she provoked him enough to go on a rant about, yes, he does feel like he should be the king. That's really dangerous. Rhaenyra right now could have completely won this week by getting the moral high ground back by saying, I locked up Daemon. He's in the dungeons now. He killed Jaehaerys. That is not my act. Got the small folk back on side, kind of. And again, they still would have, the Greens still would have responded and they still would have got it wrong, but the Rhaenyra would have the public support with being able to do that. I think she's in a very dangerous position because we've seen many times before in Game of Thrones, if your main motivation is love, you're in trouble. And that is something that ask Rob Stark how that goes. You know what I mean? If you make strategic decisions based on what is most likely to get me what I want, if your motive for it is I love the person, probably gonna die. I'm not saying Rhaenyra is gonna die. I don't know if it's that extreme, but Daemon is a flight risk and it is a very dangerous situation.
I think Rhaenyra though is kind of very wise up to that though this week though, right? They kind of made a point of that being of her really standing up for herself, and I think trying to distance herself, I think, from him as well. Especially in that scene, like he had to hold back so much from putting his hands on her.
Yeah.
There was like, and they really focused in on that as well. And I think she was very much in a fucking try it, buddy. And
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like, she cannot allow him to put his hands on her. Do you know what I mean? She cannot allow that no matter what. Like, and that in itself is like, and I feel bad because that's almost like victim blaming, and we're getting into murky territory there as well. Like, but like, there was that scene in the final episode of the series, and I'm like, you gotta behead him. At that stage, if someone wraps their arms around the king's throat, they don't have a head in the morning. And Daemon being able to do that, Daemon being able to stand up to Rhaenyra, and I do appreciate there's a respect, but like almost think of it this way: Rhaenyra has got to compose herself. She's got to convince the realm that she's powerful enough to be the first woman in charge. What would happen if the queen ever talked to the king in that way? Do you know what I mean? She'd no longer be the queen, that it wouldn't be accepted. So there is scope for being he's my partner behind closed doors. He's my partner. He's my equal. He can challenge me and he can argue with me, but he can't abuse her and he can't get away from that. And Daemon is a weakness in that respect. Do you know what I mean? In that he shows her humanity. And again, think of Damon's criticism for Rhaenyra last week. Well, the mother is grieving, the queen is away. So Daemon sees that in her, that her humanity makes her a weakness. She's got to act as the queen right now, and she's got to act in the way that the realm sees her as queen. And taking on Damon's mistakes and taking on the consequences and the negative PR that's going to come with that, and how the blacks or the greens can use that to their advantage. He's a lost leader. He's about to go on Piers Morgan and like absolutely rip Rhaenyra to part. Like if she doesn't actually act first, like interesting times. Anyway, look, we'll. I doubt this will be our last Rhaenyra and Daemon conversation. Last thing I want to talk is just a general question that I had this week because we got a lot of insight into the small folk, and it made me think about the small folk, and I really want to see more of how does this impact the rest of the realm. The branding and marketing around this was done really well by Sky, who are a great company. Unbiased opinion there. But the branding and marketing around it was almost choose, and it's kind of playing Team Black against Team Green, which, being honest, is it's not really a debate. One's very good and moral, and one's very evil. And it's like, do you like the good guys or the bad guys? But it got me thinking when we saw the small folk this week of, what would you do if you were living in this world and all you had to care about was your family? Like, as much as we care about who the Taoiseach is, it doesn't affect our day-to-day decisions. But like, where would you rather live in this impending war? Would you rather live in Dragonstone under the protection of the Greens, or would you rather live in King's Landing under the protection of the Blacks? And I think the answer to that would be put ourselves in those shoes. That's going to be indicative of a bigger question. Dan, what are your own thoughts on where you'd rather live if you were one of the small folk?
So where we are and where we've left off right now in the show, I mean, by saying this, it doesn't mean I'm on that team.
Yeah.
But
That's not the question, like, of
exactly,
who do you support, but it's, if you had to bet
100%.
your children and family's life on it, where would you rather be? Like,
I mean, it's going to be, and this is a difficult one. It's gonna, for me, be the Greens, and the reason why I would pick that is because you have the rebels, the despoilers, as the world sees it politically. Rhaenyra's team, they're on Dragonstone. They're somewhat isolated. Dragonstone isn't the bastion of siege warfare that King's Landing is. I mean, yeah, Daenerys, we saw what she could do with it, but it was, 7 seasons of television to like Siege, and we're talking about dragons and stuff like that. So your instinct then is to obviously go with King's Landing, where Aegon is in power as head of the Greens. However, he is actually killing people like almost Stalin-esque to purge them a certain way. So I'm kind of thinking of what would my position be in where I am in the real world? How would that translate over to the world of Westeros? And I think as someone who currently is a shoe salesperson and a writer, so let's just call myself a scribe and a leathersmith.
There you go.
Right now, I'd be relatively safe. So if that was my trade that looked after my family, the logical place for me to put myself would be in this incredibly fortified city where at the moment I am in no fear of being hung from a wall. So not who I support, who would I go with, having the option. Right now, as the story goes, Greens.
Interesting. Kev, what's your own thoughts?
Uh, I thought there's some very good points, Dan. I'm gonna go Dragonstone.
Okay.
I come from a seaside village. I grew up beside the sea.
Love it.
Hey,
So when I saw all those of the scenes this week, of like them collecting shells and food. And I also kind of feel like as well, if you're beside the sea and you've got like your fishing vessels, your food is a bit more plentiful than what seems to be happening in King's Landing at the moment, where they have to give up like goats and other bits. Also, your amount of goat stew going on is also there's clearly goats here on what you got it on Dragonstone too. But there was no mention really of, and there could be as well, but there was no mention of food shortage, I think, in Dragonstone. And yeah, I think I'd be happy out with the sea air, I think, as well. And knowing that I've made the right decision in a splintering faction.
You're morally right too. Yeah, that's good. I love the approach as well though. You're like, look, there's a war with dragons coming. Good chance I'm gonna die. So if I'm gonna die, I want to die looking at that view because you can't beat it.
Yeah.
I think you've also touched on something though really important because again we saw a scene kind of laying out the struggles and we've seen the dragons need to be fed in King's Landing. The king is willfully taking goats and other kind of livestock from the small folk. Also, what you got to take into consideration is one of the more effective techniques in this war that isn't very exciting. It's kind of like George Lucas would make a trilogy about this, but it's the military blockade that Corlys has, which is stopping food from being imported into King's Landing. So I'm probably going to go Dragonstone as well. But I'd feel bad about that. There's no good feeling that you have because if you go King's Landing, you're like, okay, fair enough, but I'm in the more established state and they're probably going to, probably going to figure it out, or at least I'll have more to do by the day. But also, I'm clearly siding with the psychopaths and the dickheads, and David Beckham is my is essentially running the place. Or I'm in Dragonstone and I'm like, okay, lovely views, have food to eat. Vhagar is coming. You know what I mean? So there's no good decision, but it's interesting to kind of talk about.
And who knows what Damon's mood's gonna be like if I walk by him as well, potentially too.
Yeah, and sometimes Damon just threatens us and says, choose, while a dragon stares at us. Just for fun. I'm like, I'm living here, dude. Like, there's why you're gonna just go back. Jesus. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Love those chats. Always great to catch up, and we'll catch up again at least one more time before we get through these 2 seasons. Before we go, end the plug, and if you don't have end the plug, then just tell us something that you're liking right now. Kev, what's going on in your world?
Our EP All Good is out now, so check out Fan Club All Good EP on Spotify. And then for Marvel nerds as well, last week, Marvel versus Capcom collection. Well, yeah, MVC collection kind of got announced as well. It'll be coming out later this year, which is huge news, because these games haven't been around in ages, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
Nice, Dan, and the plug, and you're interested in any comic books you're reading?
I'm rereading a lot of old stuff. So at the moment, I'm having downtime from work. I'm enjoying not having any responsibilities. So I'm just gonna say, like I said before, go out, grab a random comic book, read it, see what you think. That's how most people discover their stuff. So just go out and let the books decide for you.
Also, look, your girlfriend's birthday.
See, she's gonna hate that because she hates any of this stuff being public.
Okay,
But
fair.
happy birthday, Kelly. So yeah, we had a great day yesterday for her birthday. We had a great day out traipsing around the countryside today as well. So
Love it. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot there.
yeah, no, she's gonna blame me, not me. I don't do shit.
I'm talking, yeah, look, I'll take the heat for that. Guys, last thing before I go, I want to, I'm rewatching Cobra Kai. Rewatch that if you haven't already. If you never have, get in. It's the last season. The final season is a bit excessive, but it's a very, very, very good TV show, especially the first 3 seasons. Especially if you're into wrestling as well. There's a lot to like there because there's a lot of wrestling references and it takes its cues from it in story. Like there's a lot of face turns and heel turns, and we're going to talk about that towards the end of the Dragon Boys of Summer. Next week we're going to head into the last series, the second half of series 4 of The Boys. We'll have another House of the Dragon episode plus, oh, by the way, only possibly the best TV show in the world today, The Bear, is back. I'm going to be a traumatized emotional wreck, lads. I cannot wait. Thank you so much to Kev Keen and Dan Lynham. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll be back next week on the Dragon Boys of Summer. But until then, this has been the Dragon Boys of Summer. And I find you repulsive in ways that's difficult to quantify. And I'm fucking amazing at quantifying.